Plant Health Agency. Now, the hackers who claimed responsibility for attacking the Co-op's IT infrastructure have told BBC News that the supermarket narrowly avoided being locked out of their own systems. They tried to infect the Co-op with a malicious software known as ransomware, but it failed when the firm discovered the attack in action, and then they effectively yanked their own plug out. Let's get more on this with Kevin Curran, who's a cybersecurity expert at Ulster University. Thank you for joining us, Kevin. So is it just as simple as that then? Just sort of pull the plug out if you think your IT system's being attacked by hackers?
Yeah, that would be nice, especially if you could detect. It actually does contain the spread of the malware, but it doesn't eliminate the infection or restore any of the encrypted data, which may have already happened. But it is best practice to disconnect from all networks and unplug cables and turn off any wireless interfaces. And then any connected USB devices, again, just unplug them as well from any machines, which are live again. But again, in some cases, then it's better not to shut down the device, because some variants can detect the shutdown or reboot, and also you could, leading to further data corruption as well. So, and then also, in some ways, by keeping it on, you preserve the evidence. You can see where the attackers got in and possibly retrieve the encryption keys from memory. But again, you've got to balance it between the risk of the ransomware spreading further. But in some cases, again, if your devices the alarm bells start going off here and there, and it's obviously too late, it's got past the endpoint management systems again. Yeah, unplugging can stop it.
And Marks and Spencer's was hit by an attack as well, and it seems that their systems were massively compromised, and they still cannot take orders online. So do you think the Co-op's decision, even though it seems to have caused them, a lot of short-term problems, do you think what they did is perhaps help them to recover a bit more quickly than M&S have?
It's possible, but we don't know which systems. Again, Marks and Spencer's could have been just so unlucky where they got hit with their most crucial supply chain systems were taken down or whatever else, and maybe the Co-op had more redundancy, as we say. In the ideal world, you have parallel systems working, separately, of course, and if one goes down, you can turn over but that's easier said than done, because most of our systems now are real-time live data coming in, and you have to replicate it as such, and there's costs with that. But it depends on the actual systems really, and how complex it is. And for all we know, the Co-op just had better backups again, and better IT departments again, helping them in the aftermath as well. So there's too many variables to say that the unplugging was, the key differential here.
Why are these big companies so vulnerable to hackers then?
Because, in this case, it's the rise of ransomware. We've had viruses since the 80s, but they were generally a toy. They were something you do for kudos. But unfortunately, the arrival of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, again, have made it possible for hackers to get paid, and paid in in hundreds of thousands to millions again, and to remain anonymous for the most part. Because in the past, if you tried to do this back in the 90s as well, you would have to get the payment through Western, through a bank or some way of getting it, or else, maybe a drop off again. But you were easily traced. But now with cryptocurrencies, of course, you can be anywhere in the world again, and if you manage it correctly and you move the payments around, through mixers and whatever else, you could remain at large for a long, long time.
Do you think it's too difficult then for these companies to stay ahead of hackers, or do you think they just need to get a bit more savvy when it comes to IT security?
Well, see, security is improving all the time again. In a case like this, it most likely was a person in the IT department, was targeted, and their credentials were taken, and the hackers could log in as an admin again, because your average user in most companies now cannot install software again. But of course, we have endpoint management detection systems again, which look for this. And in case people don't know it, every one of your emails before it lands in your inbox is scanned again for known viruses, for known email, for known ransomware variants and whatever else. And we have all these things. But of course, unfortunately, in the IT departments of the world, we have to ensure that every avenue is blocked, but they only have to expose one weakest point again. But our systems are getting stronger all the time, but it's a complete cat and mouse game, because now these guys, again, the gang that we believe are behind it, again, that they rented from a known ransomware as a service group. In other words, they pay them, the people who actually develop the ransomware software, which encrypts all the files and does all the damage. They have affiliates, again, and they take a percentage of the payments, again, and the payments actually go to them. So, it's kind of ransomware for rent. It's malware for rent, again. So, again, one thing, I think we need to really revise prison sentences again. We need to bring in laws again, and possibly we have to have kind of a law where literally you cannot pay ransoms. And in some way, that would stop it. But until we have some kind of rule again that we don't pay ransoms and make it illegal, ransomware will exist.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us. Kevin Curran there, cybersecurity expert at Ulster University. The time is now 5 o'clock.
Across Scotland with the latest news, sport, music and culture.
On digital radio,
BBC Sounds
and your smart speaker.
Play BBC Radio Scotland.